to this week's episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Grab a seat at the table as Masters rowing coaches Marlene Royal and Rebecca Caro share their biggest secrets on how to unleash your hidden potential and plot a new course for real results on the water and off. Now, on to the show.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. I'm Rebecca Caro and today we've got a really special episode which is the start of one of 3 on speed murdering mistakes. Now, most rowers absolutely love boat speed. We like the feel, we like the way the boat moves. Some of us who like to race obviously enjoy the benefits of going fast as an aid to racing well. But, big but, there are technique things that I see over and over again which really are not helping. Recently, many of you know that I was on camp in the USA courtesy of US Rowing. And first day of camp, any coach will tell you the thing that you're generally looking at, particularly when you've got a bunch of new athletes who you don't know, is you look at how they row. You look at the movement patterns, you look at how mobile or flexible they appear to be, you look at how their blades move through the water. So I'm frequently looking at things like blade parallels. Are they parallel with the person in front of them? Are the heads moving in time? That's a really nice one to look at as a coach because you can see the spacing between 2 athletes' heads quite easily. And as they move through the stroke, does one of them get further away or closer to the other? And it's an indication that they're not moving in the same physical sequence at the same time. When I was on this camp, one of the things that I noticed that many of the athletes were doing was dragging their oars along the water. And this is the first of the speed murdering mistakes that I'm going to be highlighting. So why do people drag their oars along the surface of the water? Sometimes, it's just the tiniest little trickle. If you're rowing on flat water, you can see really clearly. And there's just a tiny wake from the edge of the blade as they're rolling up the recovery when the oar is just touching the water. Other times, particularly people who are less experienced, it can be a little bit more pronounced because they're using the surface of the water as a balancing aid. Now, one of the things that dragging your oars does is create friction. It's really not very complicated. If you have a drag on your boat, it slows the boat down. You may have experienced a little bit of weed getting trapped onto the fin or the skeg, the rudder, and you can feel it when it happens, and it surely does have quite a big impact on your boat speed. So don't drag your oars because it slows your boat down is probably the easiest thing to say and the easiest motivator. For people who are a bit more experienced, they will also know that you lose boat feel. What's boat feel? It's when you're on the recovery and you can feel how the boat is plowing through the water underneath you. Now, boats have a lateral bow to stern movement where the boat's stern comes out of the water during the power phase, and then during the recover phase, the stern goes down into the water and the bow comes up. So it's a little bit of a sort of pivot on the longitudinal axis. Part of the reason for that is our body mass with a sliding seat is moving up and down the boat. So we're not trimming the boat perfectly by sitting right in the middle of the length of the boat all the time. So this is one of the curious dynamics of a sliding seat rowing boat that is somewhat different than a lot of other wind and human powered craft, where generally speaking, you want the boat to sit optimally in the water, and it's designed to take your mass around the midpoint of the boat. Because we roll up and down, our mass is moving, and that affects the way the boat sits in the water, and the trim varies through the stroke. When you are moving with the boat on the recovery, you can feel it. You can feel the boat surge. You can feel the bows behind you lifting out of the water as you approach the front stops and the catch and the placement of the blades. And it is one of the ways that the really skilled rowers have to go a lot faster than people who can't feel the boat, because they can adapt and adjust their body movements to fit in line with how the boat is moving. So in a headwind, your boat tends to move more slowly because you're being retarded by the wind, tailwind the opposite. And this ability to feel the boat moving and to adapt and adjust your technique to match it is one of the really beautiful things that I would encourage everybody to strive to learn, because it feels fabulous. If your blades are dragging on the water, you lose the fullness, the completeness of that boat feel. And so it means it's harder for you to feel it. So how do we get on to cure? What are the things about dragging your oars that prevent you from getting your oars above the water? So some of this is confidence. Some of it is tension. Some of it is, I think, fear of the unknown. Let's deal with fear first. You don't want your oars to be high above the water because it makes the boat more tippy. And when the boat's more tippy, you're fearful of falling in, flipping. If anyone's ever seen power rowing or used pontoon floats for learn to row courses, they work really well to give confidence to the athletes. You set them like trainer wheels underneath the riggers, and they're set a few centimeters above the surface of the water so that they limit the tilt of your boat. So if you lurch a little bit toward one side, the float sits on the surface of the water and it prevents the boat from lurching further. And of course, the amount of height above the water is a reflection of how skilled the athlete is, and you can adjust the heights and so on. When you're rowing yourself and you have a wobbly stroke, and we all have wobbly strokes. I had wobbly strokes this morning. It happens. Your ability to recover from the wobbly stroke and not to react to it while it's actually happening is part of this cure of getting your oars higher above the water. Now, we've got a separate Linny podcast series called How to Row Square Blades, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Some of the cures that I am talking about here are explained in much more detail there. Go and watch that for yourself, and that will help you if you want to self-coach your way through it. But one thing I will say is that if you're skilled enough to go in a single scull, and I'm delighted if you are, you should know this. When you've got your oars out of the water, from the finish, the first thing you do is straighten your arms. And when you get your arms straight, even before you start rocking your body forward, your oars are roughly perpendicular to the side of the boat. They're about at 90 degrees. And that is the point of maximum stability. If you then put your oars down on the water, you will be able to keep the boat perfectly level. So as long as you have a little bit of upward pressure on your oar handles and both oars are touching the water. So as you go through your recovery, I encourage you to think about what is the thing that could happen and how far a lurch might happen. If you've got your oars feathered, the maximum amount of lurch is until one oar touches the water on one side or the other. And if that oar is feathered, it will just sit on the surface of the water, and yes, it'll drag a little bit, but it's not going to make you flip because it is like you're stabilizing pontoon floats. If you're a little further up the recovery and you have a wobble and your oars are square and ready to go in at the catch, yes, you can feel a little more vulnerable because the oar will go into the water. It won't stop on the surface because it's square. But if that happens, just take the stroke. Don't worry that you didn't roll to full slide, that you were at 3/4 slide, you're at half slide. It doesn't really matter. Just take that stroke and see if you can get a stable extraction and begin the next recovery with a little bit more height of the blades off the water, and your hands, check they go through crossover, nested one above the other, so that your oar handles are close together. That's one of the things that will help you make the boat more symmetrical on the recovery. So I suggest that one of the things you can do is get to a point of knowing what is the worst that can happen, knowing that if it can happen, you have a solution. And interestingly, as a little aside, that is why there's a certain cohort of long distance lorry drivers, truck drivers, who have fewer accidents than others, is because they look ahead, they see someone driving erratically, and they're already thinking, if that erratic driver does this and, you know, changes lanes unexpectedly, I will do that. And that anticipation and knowing what your action will be should something happen, that helps them to have fewer accidents. And I think the same is true here on the recovery. As Alison says, you first got to get to the safety point, and Alison finds the lurch happens at the finish quite often. Well, Alison, here is my tailored solution for you. At the finish, make sure that you have high elbows and that you've got a 90-degree angle, if possible, between your forearm and the shaft of the blade. And secondly, make sure that this bit at the base of your thumb actually brushes your shirt at the correct place. So finish with the boat level. Remember, your left hand will be higher than your right, and the two bases of your thumb will be touching your lower ribs at slightly different places. Your ability to tap down from there and get a symmetrical tap down is called weight in the hand. And that is one of the other cure points, is acquiring the skill of weight in the hand, so you know how to tap down symmetrically, putting the same amount of pressure down on both oars. Now, if you can finish with the boat level, that downward pressure should keep the boat level if you're symmetrical. If you don't finish with the boat level, you can obviously see that that's not quite going to be as successful. And pause drills are a very good way of practicing this. Stationary stability drill is a good way of practicing this. The double bounce exercise is a good way of practicing this. So the second part of the cure is about getting your finish sequence correct. A lot of times people don't get their blades off the water because what they do is they feather them out at the end of the power phase and then straighten their handles, straighten their arms, so their handles stay at the same height as they were at the finish, instead of the handles going lower and being closer to your lap, closer to your thighs for that first part of the recovery. There's no hope that you will get your blades off the water if your handles in the power phase and the recovery phase are at the same height. You might have heard the description of think about the rowing stroke cycle from the handle's point of view. Have a handle run along the top of a tabletop, and then at the finish you tap down and then it runs underneath the surface of the tabletop, and then it comes up and it goes along the top of the table again. It's a simple analogy, but if your handle height does not change, you won't get your blades off the water. And one of the things that causes people to think that they have made a change in handle height when they haven't is this: when they feather, they cock their wrist so that the handle, which I will illustrate here with one of my wonderful marker pens. Where's my favorite marker pen? Here we go. So I'm holding a pen here, and if you hold the pen in your hand, and that is your handle, and you're at the finish position, and if you cock your wrist, the pen stays at the same height and your wrist goes lower. You haven't actually pushed down and then feathered. And even if you feather with a cocked wrist, and a lot of people do, Learning to feather into your fingers is a great thing to learn, but it's not what we're talking about today. You need to have that downward press on the handle before or as you feather. Otherwise, your hand will stay at the same height. So getting the finish sequence correct of a press down and a feather, obviously, and then straighten your arms will help you. Even if you're a learner sculler and you're not super confident, even if after you've got your arms straight with the oars high above the water, you then lift the handles again so that the oars touch the water and you feel secure as you roll to the catch, you can do that. But then what you can do is gradually extend. If you do a good finish, you tap down, you get your arms straight and your body over before you lift the handles up. And if you lift the handles up, as we know, or if that lurch happens, the worst that can happen is that side of the boat, that oar, will touch the water. So trying to give yourself mini targets to aim for is a really good way to start to improve your ability to get your oars off the water. So speed murdering mistake number 1, dragging your oars. 3 ways to cure it. Number 1, have weight in the hand so that when you do your finish sequence, you take the oars out of the water. So finish sequence is number 2. And the 3rd is to get good blade height above the water so that if there is a small variation in the set of the boat, you still don't touch the water with your blades. And that's also useful in rough water. So those are your 3 things: the finish sequence, the blade height off the water, and the weight in the hand, that will help you to have that experience of feeling the flow of the boat on the recovery, and so that your oars don't touch the surface. Come back next week and we're going to be talking about speed murdering mistake number 2. And till next time, bye-bye.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your rowing friends about the show. And if you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.